you've already can smell the dead bodies being thrown into the bush, killed. So when he hit me, I rolled towards my dad and I says, "Dad, please help me. These guys are going to kill me." He says, "Son, I can't help you." So the first shot was above my head. And all I heard is my mom say, "This killed my child." Takes away. That's probably the hardest moment in my life. I felt like I cannot be helped. I cannot be saved. I'm on my own here.
Mirsad Solakovic, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, guys.
What was school like? Did you play sport at school? What were the teachers like? Were they... just give me the lowdown on what it was like being at school in your village.
The school was in a local village, so it was so idyllic. I was always a skinny child. I've always had the muscles poking out like a Bruce Lee. Always wore my vest, and I was competitive. I was praised by my PE teachers that have got a lot of potential. To follow up the sports in Yugoslavia was massive in basketball. I cannot compare it nowhere near. The UK, we haven't got basketball developed to no stage.
But your basketball teacher was a big fan of yours, wasn't he?
Yes, he didn't have children, and he gave me a lot more attention than any other children.
Mm.
We had a school assembly where the headmaster made it clear that we will finish the year, and it was year 7 early, due to our safety. So that particular week, he was, I wouldn't even say it was tensed until Friday. You know, you're talking to your chaps and stuff, and your teacher comes in, and and the first time I've seen him on a day. So he's a coach that taught us all the sport. He's got a full uniform on.
Army uniform.
And in his hand he had Kalashnikov, and the way he's put the gun is facing me.
In his hand he had a gun.
Yeah, Kalashnikov. So I'm like opposite him, and the gun is facing me. So I said, "Sir, the gun is facing me, and why are you wearing a uniform?" There's 2 questions, and he was smoking. He was a PE teacher in the 90s. We found it normal that he would smoke in his office at that time. Really bizarre. And he got angry, and he walked up to me and says, "Do you think, are you scared of me because I'm a Serb? Do you think I'm going to kill you?" I said, "Sir, I didn't know you're a Serb. I thought we're all the same." And this is when I was shocked, and the first time I've seen the other side of the teacher. He was upset, he's having a go, and I've seen the silence that kind of overshadowed the whole room, and all the kids were quiet. And for the rest of the day, you know, I was shattered with feelings and emotions. Where is this going to? But then in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, he's my teacher. I strongly believe he's there to protect us.
That's a lot to process. How old were you?
13.
That's crazy, isn't it? And you would have thought you knew the guy, and was he like a father figure for you?
Yeah, in school he was.
Tell me about the last day at school. And then when the war starts and there's a siren goes off.
Yeah.
Talk me through that situation.
So on a last day, you get like a passport. It's a little book with all your grades, and they've handwritten all your subjects. And I had overall grade A pass, and I couldn't wait to reach home to share the good news with my parents, my mum and dad. So I embraced my mum, we hugged, and I just heard a siren going off, and that was May 1992. And I asked my mum, "What's this?" It's a war siren. That means It's not safe to be inside the house. We have to leave and we have to find a shelter. The shelling started, and we went to the neighbour's house. We stayed for a couple of days in a cellar. And all of a sudden she turned around and says, well, you're no longer safe here. You'd have to find your own way to safety. And we're thinking, well, there's no safety here. People already getting killed by shelling. So we went opposite the house, which was a Bosnian house, and they had a little cellar, but it's like you have to lie down flat on your back and you have to kind of push yourself sideways to get in. And I find that really scary.
I found it scary hearing that. It's claustrophobic.
There's no light, and all when you kind of fall about 1.5 meters in like it's like a ditch. It's underneath the house, and I feel like, what if that house gets destroyed by grenade? You know, the whole house will be top up, so you'll never be able to get out. And I heard the rats. You can hear the rats squeaking, and you put your hand on it, and you see it's like infestation of rats. And then a couple days later, a military van turned up. Prior to that, my dad spoke to me on the same day. The tension's already there. You've already can smell the dead bodies being thrown into the bush, killed, and they didn't bother. They did not bother burying them. They had a sniper from the other side of the river. I remember Grandad going and burying 2 young lads that their heads were cut off. They were shooting at him. He came home crawling, and Grandad was a right character. He wasn't a person that would easily get scared, but that day he was scared, and he was saying, kids, this is serious now because there are dead bodies everywhere. Within Dad talking to me, within a couple hours, he said, listen, son, if someone comes and asks you questions, he says, what kind of questions? Who was in the Territorial Army? Do you know what weapons, this, that, and the other? You're a child, you went to school, you followed your education, you don't know nothing about it. Then I said, Dad, what if these guys threaten to kill me? He said, even if they threaten to kill you, they don't know what's in your head. It's better they kill you than the whole village. Before you know it, it was a very warm day. I was in my shorts and my white vest. The van came, and it was a military van with 6 soldiers in it, and they all had a blue camouflage uniform. And then they says to me, you need to follow us. We need to ask you some questions. And the instructions were very clear. Come here, follow us. And the way they're saying it, my legs were cut off. And when I stood, the guy says, this is where you're going to get killed. So I'm put on front of the house.
Who said this is where you're going to get
killed? One of the soldiers. And I wetted myself straight away from fear. I used to have a very weak bladder anyway as a child. So when parents would shout, to all fairness, I would just drip the water. He said, you need to answer some questions if you want to live. If you don't answer the questions, you're going to be killed. I'm looking at these 6 men, and you as a child of 13, you want to look at them, but prior to that, my dad says, whatever you do, try not to look at them, because you've actually committing a suicide, because these people will potentially hurt you or want to kill you, so you become a victim.
Did you recognize any of these men? Did you know them?
So one of them was my teacher, and he was one of the last people to help me.
The basketball coach.
Yeah, and they all taking turns. At that time, they called my dad. He says, "Go and get us a drink." I thought this is good. It's a good sign because they had a traditional Slivovic drink, which brings all the Yugoslavia together. It's a very strong spirit, and it's a sign of brotherhood. Everybody drinks it. Bosniaks, Croats, Serbs, and the more drink they had, it become harder for me. She says, we're going to put you on execution spot. And we said, do you know anyone that, I was in territorial army. I was just lifting my shoulders, mimicking to these guys I don't know. And he says, all right. He says, we haven't got time to play about. So they put me about 10 meters away. I remember the soldier saying, where do you want to be shot? I was like, don't know. Then it says to my dad, ask your dad for help. So at this point, dad is in front of me. I've been put on an execution spot. His head, they've told him to put his head down and his hands in front of him. I said, Dad, can you help me? He says, I can't help you. And then he goes, well, tell him you're going to get killed if Dad doesn't help you. I says, Dad, can you please help me? He says, I can't help you. I says, ask your dad again. So he hits me back of the head. I still got a scarf when I do cut my hair. It's a massive scar. So when he hit me, I rolled towards my dad and I says, Dad, please help me. These guys are going to kill me. And he says, son, I can't help you. Now that's the teacher's words. That was him dealing with a child that just asked him a question prior to the war. Why is he wearing uniforms, or why the gun is facing me? Was that enough to set him off to come to home and torture a young child and to interrogate the whole family? So the first shot was above my head. And all I heard is my mom saying, they killed my child. And when you watch films and you think your dad will jump in to save you, but it doesn't work like that. I felt like the more the family member got worried and upset, he was adding the fuel to the fire. The more they drank, they became more brutal. And then the second shot, they shot on the left side of me. And he says, okay, you've had all your chances. Now you're going to get killed. And you listening, what was going through my head, I felt alone, and I felt that the whole world is on top of me and I can't breathe, and it was so quick. And every second I counted in like hours, and I just wanted to get over and done with. And I remember I was so tense that all my clothes, by the way, was stripped when the water was pouring out of me. And I felt the smell of that atmosphere, smell of death. And when he shot, it was the right side of me, just missing my hand, and I felt that whiz air. And then later on, I was told that one of the soldiers pushed the barrel of the gun. The moment of life which I felt really I've had support of a relative girl that my uncle's house. She comes out from the side of the house. He says, "What you doing that to a child? What's he done to you?" One of the soldiers started walking towards her and said, "Do you want to get it?" And I was looking at her, mimicking at her, "Go away, man." Thinking I'm gonna get killed anyway. Don't get yourself killed too. And even today I feel she's the bravest girl. But what made it worse is how you react when auntie comes over. My favourite auntie. I've got a mother, then auntie. She takes auntie, says, "Don't get involved, nothing to do with you." Takes away. That's probably the hardest moment in my life. I felt like I cannot be helped. I cannot be saved. I'm on my own here. That felt hard. It felt comforting when she was trying to make a point to save me. But when her mother takes her away, my heart, I felt it was beating so fast that it wanted to come out of me. And one of the soldiers comes in, laughing. He says, "Have you seen one of these? You must have." He's kicking me. At the same time, the other soldiers got a buckle out of his waist of his trousers, and he's hitting me with the buckle of the belt on my back. I suffer with back problems for the rest of my life. It's still, even today, last couple of weeks, I've been really bad. Back of my leg, hamstrings, everywhere. They hit me with the buckle belt. There was a hole here of the shin. But that's nothing. I didn't feel the pain. You don't feel the pain at the time. So this guy got 2 grenades. And he said, "These are activated." I don't know what it meant. Activated, not activated. First time I've seen these things. I never knew what they do. I've seen in parties and films. And we all watched it in school. Because it was a pride that the martial teams in Yugoslav army beat the Germans. We felt proud of that. And even the ladies were throwing it. Once you throw it, you activate itself. But I didn't know that the pin, it gets dislodged. And then it's you hold the handles, and he says, "You hold these handles like your life depends on it. If you let it go, you'll blow yourself up."
So he's put 2 grenades in your hand that he
Yeah.
said if you let go are going to blow you up.
And it's the same thing. I was on an execution spot. So when the auntie took her away, she was 15. He says, "You come ahead here." They put me in 10 meters from them. They're giving me the grenades, and I've held them hard, and that was intense. But I thought at some point they automatically blow.
Right.
And probably 15-20 minutes, the longest 15-20 minutes in my life. And the same guy comes laughing. And then I've seen the way he was concentrating to push the pins back in. I've realised how scared he was pushing them back, that they were activated hand grenades. And that wasn't enough. And then they started cutting with the knife, and I've had a cross. There's a vague little scar just here that missed my vein.
So they cut across into you.
And there was a cross here. There's a cross on my chest. Left in a puddle of blood. Completely stripped to any kind of respect or humanity and one of them said, "Kick me with the boots in my back," and he said, "We'll come back to kill you." And that resembles in my head quite a lot in my dreams.
They did come back, didn't they? And they took you to the concentration camp.
Yeah.
in the concentration camp was your old school.
Yeah.
And the guards, again, the head guard was your basketball coach. And the other guards were your teachers.
After a couple of days, we were scared. We were in a social club on top of it, and we were scared to go to the toilet, so I couldn't have had diarrhea. I'd run down. As soon as I crouched, someone looked at me, "Oh, you, follow me." There was a medical room, and they took me over there, full of smoke, and the walls are blasted with blood.
They turned the medical room at school into a torture chamber.
Yeah.
And they'd take you to the torture chamber.
Yeah. I was beaten up with a rubber truncheon like a dog.
Was it just the boys that they tortured at school?
No, they tortured men. There was a concentration camp. This is not just torture; they killed. There were men being killed and loaded into the lorries and.
At the school you were at?
Yeah.
While the school was a concentration camp, there were men being killed there.
Yeah.
So they left. Did they just leave the females alone?
No. In that room, every night they kick the door and they take underage girls, and we all heard the noises of 15 and 16-year-old girl being raped downstairs publicly by them watching, laughing. They were drinking heavily in the night, the guards, and they would just rape the girls and then they would throw her back.
Eventually you were loaded onto a train.
Yeah, the carriages for animals, and we were transported to a side of Bosnia that was controlled by the Bosnian army, a place called Doboj, Gračanica, to be specific. What we were thinking, they'll disconnect carriages and the amount of people they want to kill and just throw hand grenades in there or whatever, and kill us. When we stopped in the middle of the bridge. On top of the bridge, it says everybody out. I have 67-year-old grandmothers jumping off the train. That sounds scary. And you work out in the war, everybody's for themselves to survive, and that's what I've learned. You don't say nothing to no one, to the nearest neighbour that you're with. You just trying to save your ass. And when I seen a grandparent jumping off of the train, I worked out this is serious. But what struck me, and it was probably the worst moment of war, and how brutal, how immoral, how inhumane was disabled people in wheelchairs, people that were like disabled, they couldn't talk, or they were people with huge disabilities. The soldiers always had a gun across their shoulders. They was always kind of ready to shoot you. They're pointing a gun at the family members because there's no access to wheelchair to push people off the bridge. And I've seen a woman didn't want to push her son, and they pushed both of them. But that sound of people falling off the bridge, and my mom kept like turning my head to look in front of me. You're walking away.
When you got off the train, you were running. And where did you go? Like, where were you going?
There was a tunnel. The tunnel separates. It's like a no man's land. The tunnel's no man's land. The other side of the tunnel, the Bosnian army.
So they'd taken you to that tunnel and said, you go, or pushing you off the bridge.
Says you got to go once you cross that side. But we thought maybe there were booby traps. We thought sometime we heard stories where they go with the tanks and to just run people over. So we thought we'll hurdle together like sheep. We'll get close to each other and just hope for the best. So we're stuck. There's no light in Bosnia. The tunnels, they don't have light. Now they have lights, but before there were no lights in the tunnel. We're waiting, and soldiers are shouting from the other side, "Come over. You are safe now. This is Bosnian army." But we learned through the war and through the past not to trust the soldiers because they do all kind of tricks. and you just get killed exactly the same way what I mentioned earlier. Yeah, you're going to safety, get a bit of money, you'll be saved, and they've killed people, they've thrown them off the cliff. So we didn't move until the soldiers start coming to us, and remember, with torches saying, look, we're Bosnian army. And that feeling of freedom, something that the words will never explain until you live through it. It's just like, and then you find that they say the stress, the amount of energy you burn, it's unbearable. The water, I've these women and children standing on the side of the street, and they were just passing like a pies, cheese pies, and water. And I had a bottle of a litre of no water. I wasn't interested in the food. When I started gulping that water, I didn't stop until the bottle was empty. I remember my mum saying, you'll get diarrhea, the water's cold, you're hot. But man, I didn't care. It's the best bottle of water that I ever enjoyed drinking in my entire life. And it was a sign of freedom, you know. You look at the sky, and you were allowed to look. You're allowed to look all around you. You were just like that. You don't look at this, or you don't look at no one. And then they tell you what they want, but they always, whatever you do, they'll tell you, they shout at you anyway. The freedom is something you cannot respect it until you lose it. And we realized how fortunate we were just to get our freedom. And you still fully don't trust people. It took us months to trust people. You're just thinking, is this a setup?
So I'm going to briefly sort of gloss over. I mean, it's a big part of your story, but I'm going to gloss over it a little bit, because if someone's listening to this and they want to know more about the details, because they can have a read of your book, which is incredible. We've literally covered the first third of it, maybe first half of it. So you move to the UK, you move to Birmingham, and you don't speak the language. You get put into schools, you struggle all the way through school because you're fighting, you've got PTSD, you're getting into scraps every other day. You're finding it hard to make friends, you're finding it extremely difficult to fit in to the country. You work your way through school, you finally make it to a point where you're making some friends, and you're becoming accepted in your high school, and you made a speech to your whole high school, and you could still barely speak English. Can you remember what the speech was?
Bosnia war. My teacher tortured me. My family killed. War. I don't like war. I don't like no weapons, no troubles. I want peace. And it's probably the hardest speech that I ever did in my life. It was so tense, and I've had a piece of paper that I've written to it. Pronunciation was a nightmare. I looked around, and all these bullies and teachers were all crying. They were so moved by someone that received so much pain, but the pain was in my eyes. The pain was my facial expressions and body language. To be so brave to stand in front of all his head and just say a few words that no one ever heard me speaking. They really touched. And the first time I felt compassion by people. And that day I found my voice. I was able to communicate with the world. I was able to gain trust. I was able to be accepted as a human being. Able to be accepted as a normal person. who wasn't categorized as mentally ill, crazy child. And when I was checked by the doctor, medical doctor, when we first landed in Birmingham in mosque, he made it very clear to my parents, this is the child, suffers bad PTSD. My mom says, what medication he takes to get well. It's not an easy thing. He'll follow him for the rest of his life, and don't be surprised that this child, it won't be a normal child. He won't be able to communicate with people, won't be able to get education, won't be able to get a job, he won't be able to start a family. I only have one thing that no one around me has got no experience with, and I worked out in my head that I could put up with any pain by myself and I can cope with it. And I thought that would be my starting point to build myself up.
There's so much to your story that we haven't covered. There is so much to your story that we haven't covered. And, we could... I've literally covered probably a quarter of the questions that I had written down. But if someone does want to know more about your story, The Boy Who Said Nothing, the book, you can get that anywhere you can get most books. It's mind-blowing, the stuff that you've been through, not just the stuff that we've talked about today, but all the stuff that you went through when you got to the UK as well as a refugee, and how you were treated, like your friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger, like how that all came about. It's all in the book, and it's an incredible story. So thank you so much for sharing such a small part of it with us today.